Hello, unstoppable real estate investors. I'm Rayon Starr, your host. And in our top 5%er real estate investor interviews, I have with me Fred Shat. How do you say?
Shatsoff with an S.
Shatsoff with an S, Shatsoff. And he will be my top 5%er real estate investor I'm interviewing today. And I want to share some of his bragging points here. Fred graduated from William Patterson University with a degree in accounting in 1979, so we're dating each other. In 1989, he has been in the lending business since then, in the mortgage business. He's an expert in FHA, VA, and first-time financing. He's always been a top producer. The last 2 years, he spent working as a commercial loan advisor with Everest Business Capital. His specialty now is alternative finance and private financing. His main focus is helping real estate investors in the bridge financing, in the purchase, renovation of single family, 2 to 4 family and ground up constructions, mixed use properties, and turnkey rentals. He's the president of the Wayne Rotary, past president of the Wayne JCs, and past president of the Wanake JCs. He's also a JCI senator, Paul Harris Fellow Award recipient, and a Walter Head recipient. And his company is Everest Business Capital. Everest Business Capital is a private hard money lender founded in 2014. Their mission is to help real estate investors quickly and efficiently finance their acquisitions and rehabs. Since August of 2014, they funded over 850 projects with $150 million in loans made, and they also fund turnkey rentals. They're a nationwide lender, and they close your loan in 15 business days. You're going to be a very popular man in this group, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you.
People are always looking for lenders. So
thanks so much for that wonderful introduction. It's nice to connect with you and be here and let your audience know about me, what we do.
Where are you located?
I'm in New Jersey. I
knew it was New Jersey or New York. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm a lifelong resident. Look, I was born as a small child in New York. I don't know anything about living in New York. I moved to New Jersey, never left, even went to college in New Jersey. I mean, I thought about leaving a few times, but as time went on, I didn't leave. And one thing I'm going to say, I'm glad I stayed in New Jersey, especially when your parents get a little bit older. Yeah. And they need that, rather than have to fly and forth. My one sister is still here in New Jersey. My other sister went down to Florida. It looks like we may have froze.
Yeah, it looks like you froze up a little, but we could still hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fine. So,
hey, Fred, I'm wondering, why did you want to be on my podcast? What's the message you want to get out there?
I guess the message that I want to get out there is that there is a lot of different types of financing out there for real estate investors. And also, you really want to be careful who you do business with. And the reason I say that is the following. First of all, with all the years of experience that I have between doing regular lending versus real estate investing, first of all, I'm a broker. So I represent a number of different lenders. And what I do for you is I vet out the different lenders to see who really is the best lender to go to. Because, I get approached every day by all sorts of different people, and I can tell right away if I talk to somebody or somebody sends me an email about something, that something isn't real. I mean, I give you an example. I've seen some people approach me, oh, I'm private lender. We can do 4% for 30 years. And right away, I know that that's not true because first of all, if you want to get a conventional loan right now, owner occupied, you're about 5.5%. An investment loan is typically going to be higher. So
Higher.
I know right away that this person is not real. I'm not going to deal with them, and, sometimes if somebody has something that seems a little bit different, I will give them a shot and I will see how they do. But I know, who to deal with. I know who I can have a conversation with if I do need to get, let's say an exception to a loan, or there's a little bit of an issue to get something to work around, to get something closed. And that's very important. Look, is rate the most important thing? Not really. I mean, look, to be honest with you, if you're doing a property and you're renovating it and it's a short-term loan for 12 to 13 months, does rate really matter? No. Look, everybody's rates are for the most part about the same. It's a matter of the person knowing what they're doing. I mean, I say to people, these loans are really a piece of cake if you know what you're doing. And the reason I say that is when I first started, and I did a lot of FHA, VA loans, and I used to do a lot of loans in the urban area, and we would have 4 to 5 borrowers buying a 2 to 3 family house that they were owner occupying. And we would have a file this thick because we had to verify employment, we had to verify assets. They might need a credit explanation. They might need to build the credit profile. As compared with these loans, it's very simple. You need an LLC. You can form an LLC today, buy a property tomorrow. You have to have the credit, typically 660 to 680. You have to have the down payment, and the numbers have to work. We don't ask where you work. We don't ask what your income is. As long as the numbers work, then the only thing that's really got to get done is an appraisal. If it's a fix and flip, they want to review the construction budget. Other than that, there's really not much more to do. I mean, it's just waiting.
Yeah, could I jump in there a second? The
Sure.
distinction between conventional lending and conventional residential lending, as opposed to private or hard money lending, is with conventional lending, you're lending to the person and their credit worthiness. Whereas when you're hard money lender, private money lender, you're lending based on the merit of the deal, correct?
Correct, right. You're lending to the LLC. You're lending based upon the numbers. Now, do you have to qualify credit-wise? Yes, you do. Do you have to have the money? Yes, you do. Because I get people call me, oh, they want to invest in real estate. So now we start to have a conversation. Somebody says, well, my credit score is 550. And I'm saying, okay, is there a reason that your credit score is 550? And everybody's got every excuse in the book. I was late with this, blah, 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 blah. This is okay. So I try to let people down gently. I'll say, well, how much money do you have that you're working with? Well, I've got $500 that I'm working with. And, you don't want to laugh at the person, but I'll say, well, here's what you may want to do. First of all, see if you can get a credit partner. Maybe you can get a money partner. If that's not an option for you, you know what? Maybe start out wholesaling and building up some cash, because you are going to need some money. And then look, I'll say, let me give you an example, and I'll go through the numbers and I'll say, this is how much you're going to need. Depending upon what their credit is, maybe you may want to get credit repair. Or sometimes some people say, I don't have any credit. Well, you're going to need to have credit. Well, I don't believe in borrowing money. It says, unfortunately, you have to have credit to be able to get credit. Why don't you do this? Why don't you get a few small credit cards, use them once a month, put
Right.
$40, $50 on there and pay it off, build up your credit profile. I understand you don't want to get in debt, but a lender is going to look at your credit. And, then sometimes people will come back, they'll find either a credit partner or they'll find a money partner or something along those lines. I mean, people don't understand. Look, even if you're buying a regular house today that you're going to live in and you go FHA, you need 3.5% for your down payment. Or if you're a veteran, you have to buy a house with no money down, you're going to need closing costs. Now, we used to do it one time, the seller would pay some of the costs. Right now in this market, a seller is not going to pay the closing costs because there's so many people out there. So
Right.
I try to take an educational approach with people because you don't want to let them, you don't want to be too hard on them or make them feel bad. Look, educate
You
them
froze
so at
up
least they
again,
know,
Fred.
and then maybe they come back to you at a later date, when things change. But that's the approach that I've always tried to take with people. Give them an example. Sometimes I'll say, do you have a property in mind you want to buy? Yes, I do. Okay, well, let's look at some rough numbers on that property. But, like I said, the advantage of dealing with me, you can talk to me at night, you can talk to me on the weekends.
Well,
if
and
they're
also you're educating people and you're helping
correct.
them increase the odds that they will get money loaned to them. And if they are not going to qualify right now, you're giving them a way to be able to get that
Qualify.
in the future. Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah, and
right.
that's nice.
That's the advantage of, dealing with someone like myself. The other thing I say to everyone, whether you're a new investor or you're an experienced investor, if you find a property that you want to buy, call me. Let's go over the numbers, make sure the numbers work, and it's better to have a second set of eyes on the property. The other thing is, don't get emotionally involved in the deal if you're buying an investment property. If you look at it, let's say there's tenants in there, and let's say you look at it and say, oh God, I don't like this kitchen, or everything's very old in here. Well, if you have a tenant and you have good rental income, you're not living in the house. Doesn't really matter. If a tenant moves out, then you can always upgrade the house. But some people, they get a little emotionally involved. It's really about the numbers, as compared with if you're buying a house, it's location, location, location. If you're buying an investment property, it's numbers, numbers, numbers.
Absolutely. So are you doing any investing yourself right now? Or are you just pretty much on the lending side of the business?
Right now I'm doing strictly lending. I mean, I used to invest at one time, but right now I just don't have the energy to do that. And look, I've always liked helping people, with some type of financing. I mean, look, I'll give you an example. Before I got into lending, and I'm dating myself, I think in the early 80s, I sold real estate for about 5 years. Now, the first house that I ever sold, it was $26,000. So, you didn't make much of a commission then, but, that's fine. And then, 2-3 years later, the average house was about $150,000. Now, I'll give you an example of how I saw things real. Then, I had a listing, and this happened to be the highest listing priced house in Wayne at this time. I think it was $335,000, which was a lot of money. Now, this was a beautiful old carriage house, and there were actually 3 building lots. This house had been on the market, I think, for 3 years. Obviously, it was overpriced. I got the people to bring the price down. Another agent had a buyer. This was a builder that wanted to buy the house cash. And, it's in the people that owned this house, that it was actually an estate. So there were two sisters. There was actually three sisters that owned the house. One sister and her husband didn't live in the house. The other two sisters lived in the house. Now, everybody was very nice. These two sisters reminded me of the Baldwin sisters from the Waltons. So I don't know how many people are probably familiar with the Waltons, but these people were very prim, proper, dressed to the hill. Every time you came there, they served tea and everything along those lines. And believe it or not, even though this was a cash deal, it took quite a while to finalize it. It wasn't the price. It was, they wanted to make sure they were going to be able to have a place to live. They wanted certain stipulations in the contract. And, eventually we did get this property closed. I think the house got knocked down and the builder put 4 houses up there. I never worked so hard on a cash deal. You would think a cash deal is going to be easy, but you don't know, because these people were a little eccentric. And, then kind of what happened was, a bunch of these loan officers used to come to your office, and a couple said, you should probably get into the lending business because you're pretty good with the numbers. And that's kind of how I got into the lending business. And, it was very different back then. I mean, we met with everybody face to face. Nobody had cell phones. Nobody had computers. Nobody had emails. We had pagers, and, you had to go find the cell phone. And sometimes these people will be paging you on, like, okay, give me a chance. I got to find a cell phone. I mean,
so fast forward to today, what's your ideal situation to loan to?
I mean, my ideal situation, obviously I like working with someone who is an experienced investor who's, done it 2-3 times, but I also like working with new investors that have a little bit of knowledge and have a little bit of money to work with, and, want to learn, want to work with someone who can really help them, provide them with the knowledge. I mean, look, I'll talk to anybody, but obviously the ideal situation is someone that's done it before, because if you work with the buyer, the same person over and over, you don't really have to ask for too much from that investor, because you have the entity docs, you have the driver's license. You probably just have to get a new contract on what they're buying, and you probably have to get more current bank statements, which makes it really, really.
So is that what you're wanting to do, is just build up more relationships with more investors that you lend to on a regular basis?
Correct. I mean, that's the ideal way, is really to be able to do it where you have somebody that comes to you, as we all know, on a referral, as compared with having to look for people on your own and try to convince somebody, to use you and stuff like that. Because for the most part, are everybody's rates the same? Yes. But it's a matter of, do you trust that person? Do you have confidence that that person will do what they say they're going to do? Is that person going to answer the phone and be upfront with you? I mean, I'll give you an example. Right when the pandemic first started, I mean, I probably had, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 loans. A bunch of them were ready to close, and then all of a sudden the lenders weren't lending, and they decided, a day or two before, that we can't close the loan. So,
that
what
was
do you
a
do?
bummer. Yeah.
So, I just called the people and, and I said, look, I just want to let you know, look, I heard from the lender. Unfortunately, we can't close this loan. It's not just this particular lender. Give me a few days and let me see what I could do if I can find another lender to go to. Now, one guy started to get very upset with me. And I said to him, Phil, you need to calm down. He says, I said, he didn't believe me. I said, okay, you could call the lender yourself. I said, that's fine. I said, but it's not me. Then he called the lender and he said, yeah, I realize it is not you. I says, yeah, I understand. He says, there's not much I can do. Now, I'll never forget this. I called one lender and the guy says, yeah, we can still close loans. I says, okay, great. So I, asked him to give me a pre-approval and he gives me a pre-approval and I wanted to know if we could use the appraisal. And, he texts me back and he says, I'm on the phone. I'll get back to you. The guy still has not gotten back to me. Boy, that's the longest phone call I've ever seen somebody on. Like, you know what? If you can't do it, you can't do it. I mean, it's
Right.
It's not going to be the end of the world. You're not the only one, but, look, you got to be truthful with people and let them know what's going on. I mean, sometimes you get a problem with a loan. We wish we lived in a perfect world and we wish every situation is perfect, but it's not. But the bottom line is the quicker you tell somebody that there's a problem and you're trying to help them, they're going to appreciate it because people realize things happen beyond your control. Sometimes a property doesn't appraise. And you know what? It's better for the borrower. Why overpay for the property?
All right. So, Fred, what's your advice to new investors? Because a lot of new investors, what slows them down on their investing or acquisitions is they're worried about the funding. And what I tell a lot of them is, look, they get frustrated because they'll go to a hard money lender, and hard money lenders in general won't tell them much until they've got a deal on their doorstep. And I said, well, you can still find out what their terms are. You can still get yourself on the radar. You can still start the relationship with them and have a spreadsheet or put it in your CRM of all these lenders that when you've got a deal, you're going to just go down the list until you find the one that you click with. But what would your advice be to brand new real estate investors who are out there grinding away to get their first deal with regard to how they can prepare best to really increase their chances of a lender working with them? What do lenders need to have from them?
That's an excellent question. So what I would recommend is, obviously, if you've saved some money and you think you're ready, talk to someone like myself and look, just say to them, look, I want to get into real estate investing. Okay, that's fine. How would it work and how would I be able to get a loan? So my first question is going to be, do you think you want to do a fix and a flip? Do you want to do the BRRRR? Or are you looking for long-term rentals? Then from there, basically what I do is I explain the process to them, try to do a little bit of fact finding, find out what they have, and say, this is what you're going to need to do to be able to be prepared.
Yeah, that's the answer right there. I want you to actually say, what is it that they need to do as a new investor to get a lender to bank on them, literally
Correct.
bank on them as a new investor with no experience? What are the best chances of them getting a lender to loan them money? What exactly are you looking for? What do they need to provide that's going to increase their chances?
All right, so it's relatively simple. So the first thing they're going to need to do is form an LLC. They could do that online themselves. They could have their accountant do it.
Let's assume they've already done that.
Perfect. Okay. So the next thing we're going to find out is, okay, how much do they have set aside? Now, from there, they may have enough they may not have enough. I'll say to them, well, what is your plan as far as trying to save some additional money? How much money are you putting away on a monthly basis for real estate? Or do you have maybe a family member that wants to go in with you and maybe put that family member on the LLC?
Let's
Because maybe,
assume they are only going to leverage other people's money, that they're not going to put their own money in it.
okay, all right. So if they do that, they could do one of two things. They could partner with that person, put that person on the LLC with them, or they could, get that money deposited into
So you're
their,
going to require they have a private money lender, or that they're putting some of their own money into the deal.
right. They're gonna need some of their own money to get into the deal. The way that most of
Their
these
own
hard
money or a private money lender?
well, if they get look, the way that these loans work, typically they don't allow secondary financing with something like this. So they're gonna have to have their own money, or if they have somebody who is willing to give them the money, let the money be in their account for a little while before they proceed, because they don't allow secondary financing.
Okay, so you can only loan to new investors that are putting their own money into a deal. You don't work with hard money lenders that will loan to someone that has a private money lender in second position.
That is correct. I
Okay.
mean, there are a couple of other alternatives might be, maybe somebody owns a house, maybe somebody has a lot of equity in the house. Maybe they have a home equity line of credit. They could do that. I have some other ways where they could get some additional.
All right, so
funding,
how
like
much of a percentage do they need to have of their own money in the deal?
Okay, so if somebody's buying a turnkey rental, we'll typically lend 75 to 80% of the purchase price is what
Okay.
we'll lend, depending
20
upon
to
what the
25.
numbers are.
But what
Right.
about like on a rehab?
On a rehab, it could be anywhere from 80 to 90% of the total cost of the project. So what we mean by that is the purchase price plus the rehab. We typically can loan 80 to 90% of that, depending upon what their experience is. The maximum ARV has to be 70 to 75% is where it's going to be.
Okay, so in order for you to lend to investors, they have to put their own money in the deal or work with a private money lender that's willing to not be in the second position on the lien. And
Correct.
that they need to put somewhere between 10 and 20% into the deal.
Right. Now, other alternatives might be the following. If somebody happens to have a 720 credit score and above, I might be able to get that person an unsecured line of credit at a 0% interest, and then they could use that line of credit to do their investing with. I also have a fairly new product. It's called the equity loan alternative. If somebody has a 500 credit score and above, we could do a second position on that home with no payments. The maximum loan to value would be 80%, and it could be anywhere from $25,000 to $500,000. So that's another way for someone to get some money to work with, where we could help them, because that lien would be against their primary residence. Or if they have a home equity line of credit, they could use that as well, because that's not a lien against the property. So there are some ways, other ways. Maybe somebody has a 401k at their job. They could always take a loan against their 401k. So there are a number of different ways where someone can come up with money. So, I mean, even if someone has a cash value life insurance policy, they could take a loan against that. So, when I talk to somebody, I'll say, well, do you have a 401k? Do you have IRAs? Do you have a cash value life insurance policy? So I'm trying to get a full financial picture of
Sure.
that person.
Okay, that's helpful. So if you had a message you could shout from the rooftops for all investors to hear and heed, what would that advice be?
I think if you truly want to invest in real estate, there are ways to do this, like we just talked about. Even if you're not ready right now, suppose it takes you 6 months to get yourself together or a year to get yourself together, there will always be real estate deals out there, and traditionally real estate has always been a good investment. Look, the hardest part is always getting the first deal. It's just like if you've never done, let's say, a fix and a flip before, be prepared that depending upon what the renovations are. So if you budgeted $30,000, it might cost you $40,000. And the reason I say that is you never know what's going to happen when you open up those walls. Is there a problem with plumbing, electrical? I mean, you could have the greatest contractor come in, but until they open up those walls and see what's behind there, you just don't know. And you have to be prepared for that. And you have to, but you know, if you're determined and you really want to do it, you can really do it. It's similar to learning how to ride a bike. Think about it. The first time you rode a bike, did you fall down? Yes. What did you do? Most likely you got up and continued to do that. And that's what you have to do. And sometimes if you have to do your first deal and work with someone as a mentor to help you who's done a real estate deal before, that's fine too. I mean, because look, even if you made a $30,000 profit on a deal, okay, you know what? That might be a half a year's work for somebody that you might do in 3 months. And now you rinse and you repeat. And, you know, you're going to learn the formula.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Fred, for joining us and for really sharing about the lending side of the business, because that's a big piece that's so important for people, and being very clear about what lenders are looking for. That's very helpful. And so if any of you are really needing guidance with a lender and someone who's really open to talking to you and helping you get the right mindset and prepared to, you know, build up those lending assets to do deals, then reach out to Fred. I will post up above all his contact information so you can reach out to Fred and have him give you some advice and guidance on preparing to fund those deals. Thank you so much, Fred, for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. It was great to, you know, get to know you, and you know, hopefully your audience finds this helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.